All right, so it is midday on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, and the global financial blackout has just entered a second, even more terrifying phase as the national security halt has officially been extended across the entire G7 banking network. While you were waiting for a recovery this morning, the real-time data streaming into the JON CC archive proves that the interbank settlement system has not just glitched, but has been fundamentally dismantled to prevent the public from seeing that the Western gold vaults are now officially empty. My hands are actually trembling as I look at the internal audit logs from the primary bullion warehouses in London, because they confirm that military tactical units have been deployed to oversee the final requisition of all remaining physical reserves. We have officially hit the 0 hour of the systemic reset, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to expose the hidden Tuesday transparency protocols and show you why the paper-silver price has been frozen at $84, while the physical reality in the East has gapped into the triple digits. The gap between the paper price on your frozen screen and the actual cost of survival has just hit a level that makes traditional Western economics obsolete today, February 24th. We are witnessing a historic global decapitation where the Western exchanges are showing a static price of $84 for silver, while the physical dark pools in Shanghai and Dubai are trading at over $120 per ounce. This is the terminal disconnect that John AG warned was the ultimate signal of the dollar's death, and the speed of today's collapse has triggered an emergency swift blackout that has left millions of international transfers in a state of permanent limbo. The vaults in New York are currently being scrubbed of their historical records to hide the fact that the actual reserves were moved to settle the elite's private debt during the Monday meltdown yesterday. If you are not watching the internal settlement failures right now, you are essentially a prisoner of an algorithm that has already deleted your financial history from the digital grid. The Tuesday afternoon session has failed to open across every major Western stock exchange as the system controllers realized that the Monday meltdown was not a flash crash, but a total loss of confidence in the digital ledger. We have seen a catastrophic failure of the repo markets where the big banks are refusing to accept any form of government debt as collateral, demanding instead the physical metal that the West no longer has in its possession. There are currently over 100,000 silver contracts demanding immediate physical delivery at the COMEX that have been met with access denied messages, leading to a total freeze of all precious metal trading for private citizens. The global market is no longer a place of discovery. It is a crime scene where the evidence of a $35 trillion heist is being hidden behind a series of coordinated cyber attack narratives. If you are still holding digital receipts for assets you do not physically control, you are holding a claim on a bankruptcy that has already been finalized by the elite. The macro context has shifted into a state of total hyperinflationary silence this morning as the currency markets have stopped quoting the value of the dollar against anything other than oil and gold. This is the definition of a market heart attack, where the central banks are trapped in a liquidity grave, unable to print their way out without instantly destroying what remains of the middle class's purchasing power. The masses are waking up to find that their credit cards are being declined and their banking apps are showing system error, while the elite have already moved their capital into the private analog bunkers of the New World Order. You can verify these system failures by looking at the interbank lending spreads if you can still access a terminal. The math is terminal, but the mainstream media is being legally gagged to prevent a total societal breakdown. JON CC is archiving these final movements of the digital era because the synergy between this banking blackout and the physical resource shortage is the final chapter. Geopolitics has officially entered the checkmate phase this Tuesday as the BRICS nations have officially activated their Kazan ledger, effectively cutting the G7 out of the global supply chain. We are seeing record-breaking physical silver and gold shipments being moved under naval escort toward the east, stripping the Western world of its last remaining defenses in a coordinated economic strike. This is not a trade dispute. It is the final phase of a financial war where the East has the physical world and the West has only the digital debt and a failing internet. The United States has attempted to respond by declaring a financial national emergency, but you cannot use a decree to stop a physical drain when your vaults have been empty for weeks. The fragmentation of the global market is now a historical fact, and the silence of the markets today is the alarm bell signaling that the door has been permanently locked for everyone who stayed inside. An unusual options position has just been identified in the shadow settlement layers that suggests the system architects are preparing for a total wealth revaluation, where all private digital assets will be converted into a new programmable token. We are seeing massive insider selling of bank equity in the private dark pools, indicating that the people who run the banks are betting on a total digital reset within the next 24 hours, while the retail public is being told to stay calm and wait for the system to come online. The scale of these moves occurring during a bank holiday is the final signal that the global elite have completed their exit. This is not a theory. It is a data point sitting in the encrypted logs for anyone who knows how to read the signals of the banking cartel. In a world of digital deepfakes, these large-scale tail risk bets are the only honest indicators of where the system architects expect the world to be by the time the sun sets today. The honest bearish case must be stated because intellectual honesty is what separates a real archive from a channel that follows the fear of the masses. If the G7 central banks manage to implement a total global internet quarantine tonight, they might be able to temporarily freeze the prices of physical assets through a total suspension of all legal commerce and private communication. Furthermore, if a sudden military seizure of all private precious metal holdings is declared under the Defense Production Act, the state might attempt to refill its empty vaults by taking what belongs to you. However, none of these short-term tyrannical actions change the physical reality that the Western world is currently running on empty and its digital currency has lost all credibility in the East. You can pass a law to steal an asset, but you cannot pass a law to restore the trust that has been incinerated by 80 years of debt. The JON CC data proves that the physical floor is now higher than the state can control. Silver has officially gapped to $110 in the pre-market dark pools this morning, creating a massive liquidity vacuum that is sucking the remaining life out of the digital economy as investors scramble for the only asset that still has physical integrity. The base building phase is over, and the vertical reset of the global financial system has begun, leaving the high-frequency trading bots in a state of total paralysis as they attempt to sell ghost silver that does not exist. That level is the new line in the sand for the global market structure, and as long as the Asian exchanges remain open and demanding physical metal, the momentum remains firmly with the owners who are refusing to sell their ounces at any price. The next major resistance levels are now in the thousands, a scenario that the mainstream media called a conspiracy only yesterday. Yet the depth of the current physical shortage suggests that the move will be finalized before the banks reopen. The interbank settlement average is now acting as a terminal ceiling for the digital dollar, and every time the interbank rate tries to normalize, it is met with a wave of default notices from the primary bullion banks in London and New York. The question for the coming hours is straightforward. Will the G7 governments be forced to declare a total national banking holiday before midnight, or will they allow the ATMs to run completely dry and risk a total collapse of the urban centers? The supply-demand setup for the global financial system is fundamentally broken, and the only way to rebalance the ledger is through a return to a physical asset standard that the West currently lacks. JON CC is tracking the interbank liquidity ratios because that is the live variable that will tell the real story before the final market freeze and the permanent lock on your banking access. When the paper-to-physical ratio finally snaps tonight, the wealth of the world will move from the promise holders to the asset owners in a matter of seconds. The Shanghai Gold Exchange is currently the most important market in the world for physical assets because it is the only exchange that requires the metal to be in the vault before a trade can be executed. The fact that the East is consistently paying 30% more for silver than the paper quotes in New York proves that the seesaw has finally broken, and the arbitrage is now working to liquidate the Western banking system from the inside out. When the Western public realizes that the market price is a rigged simulation, they will find that the local dealers have already been cleared out by the very banks that are telling them to stay calm. This is why the JON CC mission is so critical. We provide the data in the quiet moments so that you can act before the meltdown becomes the permanent reality of the post-dollar world. Reclaiming your sovereignty starts with owning assets that have no digital delete button and no government counterparty required for their value to exist. The high probability of an overnight total internet blackout in the financial zones is now the primary driver of the global risk models, creating a synchronized convergence of risk that the Western world is completely unprepared for. As the interbank communication channels continue to degrade this evening, the natural floor for physical assets increases, creating a wall that the AI trading bots and the state-controlled news networks cannot overcome. We are witnessing the end of the era of digital abstraction and the birth of a physical reality where the control of resources defines the power and sovereignty of every individual. JON CC is the only archive cross-referencing this data across multiple layers of the global grid, showing you the map of the sovereign future while the mainstream media is still reading from the script of a dead empire. The time for speculation is over. The time for verifiable physical reality has arrived for those who have the eyes to see the truth. The change in total interbank liquidity across all major global exchanges shows a negative trend that is mathematically terminal for a digital economy that relies on constant debt expansion to survive. Silver is the primary industrial insurance for the high technology and green energy sectors, and as the cyber pandemic narratives accelerate tonight, the demand for physical backup systems is gapping higher than at any point in human history. The price suppression of the last decade has left the West with zero strategic reserves, leading to a structural bankruptcy that cannot be fixed by printing more paper or adjusting the digital interest rates on a central bank computer. The ones who check the interbank settlement reports do not need a financial expert to tell them the system is failing. They can see the bankruptcy and the pending status of their own transactions. Protecting your history requires an understanding that we are moving from a world of infinite paper to a world of finite physical truth. The psychological warfare of the current hour is designed to keep you in a state of cognitive freeze, while the global elite quietly move the world's remaining gold and silver into their own private analog archives. They want you to believe that the current system errors are just routine maintenance, while they are using the cover of the night to finalize the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the human race. By the time the new global ledger is officially announced at daybreak, the average citizen will be trapped in a digital identity system with no physical assets to trade for their basic survival. This is why the JON CC archive is providing the evidence of the Great Confiscation in real time, offering the strategic blueprint for the sovereign individual to survive the reset. Sovereignty is not a gift from the state. It is the physical possession of your own value and your own data outside of their digital panopticon. The return of global physical demand to the silver market tonight is the final test for the Western banking cartel's ability to maintain the illusion of a functioning currency system. If the current gap between the Shanghai pre-market and the New York after-hours does not close within the next few hours, it will trigger a chain reaction of defaults that will leave the bullion banks and the paper exchanges in a state of total liquidation. The banks are currently using every tool in their arsenal, from artificial internet outages to high-frequency spoofing, to prevent this outcome, but they are fighting against the laws of supply and demand. You cannot satisfy a physical requirement with a digital lie, and the coming break will be a total reset that moves wealth from the paper holders to the asset owners. This is the moment of truth that defines the next 100 years of human history, and the data shows that the clock has already hit zero. Stay sovereign, stay informed, and stay physical, because in the archives of history, the only currency that survives the fires of a system reset is the one you can hold in your hand and defend with your integrity. The global market is resetting into the shadows of this Tuesday night. The digital mask has officially slipped, and the physical truth is finally taking its throne in the vaults of the East and the hands of the sovereign. We will see you on the other side of this meltdown, where the reality of the vaults defines the wealth of nations and the freedom of the individuals who saw the data before the lights went out forever. This is JON CC, and this is the strategic archive of the final days of the digital financial illusion. Thank you for watching, and remember to always verify the physical flow before you trust the numbers on your screen, because in the age of the reset, only the physical is real.